please rise and body your spirit and join me in singing hymn number 1010 in your teal hymnal, "Oh, We Give Thanks." We'll sing it through twice.
You guys are going to be seeing a lot of me up here this morning. That's all I can say. I am not Pat Krugman. Good morning. My name is Nora Mullligan. I am the Vice President of the Board of Trustees. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley. Whether you've been with this congregation for a decade or more, or this is your first time visiting us, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage, we welcome you. We respectfully acknowledge the territory on which our church building sits as the ancestral homelands of the Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. And we have a few announcements. UUCHV will have booth space at Peekskill Pride's Family Day in the Park this coming Saturday, June 29th, from 1 to 5 p.m. We still have 2 volunteer roles that need filling, so please talk with Margie after the service to sign up. And even if you can't volunteer, please pop by to say hello. Our inclusivity team will be there and they'd love to see you. It's at Pugsley Park in downtown Peekskill, and it's sure to be a great day for all. Let's make UUCHV's first presence in Peekskill a mighty one. Message from UU The Vote. UU The Vote at UUCHV will be kicking off their summer campaign by supporting the Vote Forward campaign. For details, please see Daria at the UU The Vote table in the fellowship hall during coffee hour. This is our first summer service. We are sharing services with First Unitarian Society of Westchester. On those Sundays when we are not having the service here, this building will be closed and it will be streaming only. Please check our website to get the dates right and get all that information. For the most up-to-date information on these topics and others, please refer to our weekly e-newsletter and check our website frequently. And please join us for conversation after the service. If you're present in the sanctuary, please join us for coffee and conversation in Fellowship Hall. If you're watching the live stream, the link for our coffee hour on Zoom can be found in the Saturday reminder in your email. If you're just recently joining us and would like to receive our weekly e-news, please email us at uukroton@gmail.com with your name, and we will make sure that you're added to our e-news list. Also, please remember to silence your cell phones at this time. And once again, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley.
Well, in case you don't already know her, I am happy to welcome Nora Mullligan as our guest speaker today. Nora is Vice President of the Board of Trustees, a worship associate, and member of several committees at UUCHV. She works at the Field Library in Peekskill and is always glad to lead a UU service here, and we're always very happy to have her lead one.
Welcome this morning, in the heat of summer, in the summer rains, in the blooming of the world. We join together, we come together to worship, to bring our best selves to life. May we all be together today. May we carry this forward from today to the rest of the week. And now, I'm really glad that there are some children here, because there weren't before. Would the children like to go and ring the bells 8 times for our 8 principles? Who's gonna lead? Gary. Go right up. This is the fun part.
Our chalice lighting words today are the words of Nelson Mandela. I have walked that long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way. But I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I have taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance I have come. But I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom come responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not yet ended. Now please join me in saying our unison affirmation. The words are in your order of service. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice. And now we will sing our children out to their religious exploration experience.
We come together in community to share with one another, to support one another, and to celebrate with one another. We bear sacred witness to each other in this honored ritual. As we begin, we know there are both great sorrows and great joys in our world that must be acknowledged as well. We light our first candle to honor those in pain, victims of violence and war and oppression all around our world. We light a second candle because we understand that amidst all that pain, there is also celebration and joy in our world. We honor that joy and sorrow are woven together. For some of us here today, this has been a week of life-changing joy that needs to be lifted up in this worship. For others, this has been a time of deep pain and sorrow that needs to be shared to make the burden lighter. If this has been such a time for you, I invite you to come forward, to light a candle, and to briefly tell us, over there, of your joy or sorrow. You may also raise your hand in silent acknowledgement of your joys and sorrows, and we will light a candle for you.
Hi, I'm Susie Dugas, and last time I was home visiting in Seattle, I got in touch with a childhood friend I hadn't really been in touch with since our 20s, and it was wonderful. And we're going back this year, so I was telling everyone, I'm coming back. And she has cancer, and it's the kind of cancer that can go to 5 years or less. So I'm really sorry we missed all those years, but I'm glad we reconnected. It's Deborah Schwartz.
Hi, I'm Peter Calloway. It was a great joy to have a week with my son who lives in Seattle, and I haven't seen him for 13 months. and we went out into the mountains on my trike and had a wonderful time. But the other joy is he spent a lot of time in the city down south, and he knew two young ladies who were married, and they decided they wanted a child, and they asked my son if he would surrogate. And he flew all the way from Seattle over there, and while he visited me, they announced that they were pregnant and 3 months in, so there's still a chance I might be a grandpa.
Good morning, Betsy. I wasn't going to light a candle, but since this is a Seattle-themed candle lighting, and I see that there's also a visitor here from Seattle, this is like 4 Seattle connections in this little room. I, too, am going to Seattle in about 2 weeks to honor my daughter's 30th birthday. I can't believe it. And my son will come up from Portland to meet us. So, yeah, Seattle, we should start a baseball team or something.
A joy for me this past week has been meeting with our community circle. I have been able to get to know people in a way that I normally wouldn't, and it's just been really lovely. So I think we're all breaking for the summer now, but I bet it's not too late if you have not joined a community circle and you were thinking of it and you meant to and you wanted to, but you didn't know if you had time. And it is hard. It's hard to find the time, but it's really worth it, and it's just something that I'm very grateful for.
So this is only my first time here since 2008, actually, because I also moved to Seattle. So I'm visiting my mother. I grew up here in Westchester, so that's my joy for the day.
If it's a Seattle connection.
I wasn't going to, but my daughter's going to Seattle to see her friend Deanna in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's reasonable, I think.
I went to Seattle last September to reconnect with a friend from high school. It's a beautiful city.
We light one final candle for all those joys and sorrows that remain unexpressed, and for those outside our walls who are searching for a place to bring the wholeness of their lives and to be received with love. I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation. Settle in a little more comfortably. Close your eyes if you wish. Allow your body to relax into this sacred space. Breathe deeply. Breathe out slowly. Breathe in compassion and breathe out peace. Breathe in compassion for all the people who have spoken this morning, all the people who have not spoken. Breathe out love for all those who are not here, all those we love who are not here right now, who we're thinking of. Please join me in a moment of silence, which will be followed by a musical meditation. reading this morning is excerpts from Ken Burns' commencement address to Brandeis College in 2024. It's on YouTube, and I highly recommend that you watch to get the whole thing. But these are excerpts. In January of 1838, shortly before his 29th birthday, a tall, thin lawyer prone to bouts of debilitating depression addressed the Young Men's Lyceum in Springfield, Illinois. At what point shall we expect the approach of danger? He asked his audience. Shall we expect some transatlantic military giant to step the earth and crush us at a blow? Then he answered his own question. Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa could not by force take a drink from the Ohio River or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. It's a stunning, remarkable statement, one that has animated my own understanding of the American experience since I first read it more than 40 years ago. That young man, of course, was Abraham Lincoln, and he would go on to preside over the closest this country has ever came to near national suicide, our Civil War. And yet, embedded in his extraordinary, disturbing, and prescient words is also a fundamental optimism that implicitly acknowledges the geographic force field, two mighty oceans, east and west, and two relatively benign neighbors, north and south, have provided for us since the British burned the White House in the War of 1812 and inspired Francis Scott Key. Lincoln's words that day suggest what is so great and so good about the people who happen to inhabit this lucky and exquisite country of ours. That's the world you now inherit. Our work ethic and our restlessness, our innovation and our improvisation, our communities and our institutions of higher learning, our suspicion of power, the fact that we seem resolutely dedicated to parsing the meaning between individual and collective freedom, between what I want versus what we need, that we are all so dedicated to understanding what Thomas Jefferson really meant when he wrote that mysterious phrase, the pursuit of happiness. I have had the privilege for nearly half a century of making films about the US, but I have also made films about us. That is to say, the two-letter, lowercase, plural pronoun. All the intimacy of us, and also we and our, and all of the majesty, complexity, contradiction, and even controversy of the US. And if I have learned anything over those years, it's that there is only us. There is no them. And whenever someone suggests to you, whomever it may be in your life, that there's a them, run away. Othering is a simplistic, binary way to make and identify enemies, but it is also the surest way to your own self-imprisonment. Remember what Louis Brandeis said, the most important political office is that of the private citizen. Vote. Please, vote. You indelibly underscore your citizenship, and most importantly, our kinship with each other when you do. Now please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 1028, The Fire of Commitment, in the Teal Hymnal. for my sermon. So, our fifth principle is the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in society at large, which seems so straightforward and so obvious that sometimes I think we take it for granted. Of course we believe in the democratic process. We're Americans. It's like our birthright. It's what we're taught from elementary school on. Nobody could be against that, right? Well, one of the more shocking things I've realized in recent years is that respect for the use of democratic process is not a given. I suppose I've been both privileged and naive, but I thought, when I thought about it at all, that if we Americans could agree on nothing else, we could agree on that. It's the heart of our Declaration of Independence. It's the principle underlying our Constitution. It's the bedrock upon which all our political institutions are built. But everybody doesn't agree with this. And actually, there has never been a time in this country when everybody so blithely agreed that we are a democracy, that the small d democratic principles are good and important, and that our country should be built on those principles. Our history is, regrettably, filled with evidence that we have honored democratic principles in the breach rather than in the flesh, starting with Europeans pushing the indigenous people off their land without regard for their needs or their greater history on this land, and continuing with the importation of Africans as enslaved people. Looking at the institutions that were designed to be undemocratic, the Senate, the federal courts, it's hard to claim that America is dedicated to the principles of democracy. During those brief eras when it seemed as if the American people were making an effort to open up democracy, it's clear that there were huge forces arrayed against them, fighting very hard to make sure that the people who ran this country were only certain people with certain genders, certain skin colors, and certain religions. And not even all the people in those categories were really supposed to be listened to and taken seriously. In recent years, it's become even more obvious that there are a lot of people in this country who hate the idea of democracy. I'm sure everybody remembers January 6, 2021, watching in horror as a group of people tried to raise an armed rebellion against the peaceful transfer of power, something that had never happened before in over 200 years of our history. I'm sure everybody's aware of the arbitrary and even capricious rulings of this Supreme Court, throwing precedent and history to the winds to achieve distinctly partisan political goals, with no one to stop them. I'm sure everyone has been watching with various degrees of horror as state governments gerrymander their states to make sure that one party stays in power despite the voters' intentions, and then go even farther, disenfranchising voters either by law or by practice. George W. Bush wasn't the first, or even the most horrifying person to say that he'd like a dictatorship as long as he was the dictator. And look, I'm not going to say democracy is easy. It's clearly not. Democracy requires some things that people do that are just not natural to us. It requires that we listen to other people, even those people we disagree with, even those people who are ignorant and acting in ways that go against their best interests, let alone our self-interest. Democracy requires that we be willing to compromise, that no one person or one group always gets to call the shots. Democracy requires that we be willing to go along with the majority even if we disagree. It requires that we don't throw the chessboard in the air when we lose. It requires that we keep playing. It requires that we have faith in our fellow human beings, our neighbors. It requires, as Ken Burns said in his commencement address, that we see ourselves as an us without anyone being a them. And I think that's why the democratic process is one of our core principles as UUs. It ties in deeply to our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Because if you truly believe that every single person has inherent worth and dignity just by virtue of being human, then it follows inexorably that every single person has the right to make decisions, to be listened to have input into the things that concern them. Because the alternative, however you dress it up, is basically saying, you are not important. Nobody cares about your needs or your desires. We know what's best for you, and maybe we don't even care what's best for you. We don't have to listen to you, and we're not going to listen to you because you don't matter. It is an article of faith for us that those statements are wrong. And we are dedicated, we have to be dedicated to proving those statements wrong, to doing everything we can to support the democratic process, to make sure everyone's voice is heard, to make sure everyone has a part in decision making. This takes time, it takes patience, it takes care and compassion, and it takes energy, a lot of energy. I don't have to tell you about all the threats to democracy. We're lucky here in Westchester, New York, that we don't have a government that is trying to keep us from voting. We don't have a government that deliberately ignores what people have voted for, like Florida, for instance, where the voters overwhelmingly voted for a law that would let former felons vote, and where the legislature then added all kinds of conditions that hollowed out that promise. Or like Ohio, where the response to voters' support for an abortion amendment led to the legislator and the governor trying to change the rules for putting issues on the ballot at all, to make it all but impossible for people to have voter initiatives. We don't have a gerrymandered state such that the majority of votes are for one party, but somehow the legislature is always weighted towards the other party. We don't do that here. We're far from perfect, but we support democracy, as some other places fail to do. But that just means our responsibility as New Yorkers, as people fortunate enough to live in a blue state, is to reach out and help our neighbors who aren't as fortunate in other states. The voting rights law used to require that states that had a pattern of discrimination had to get pre-clearance from the Justice Department before they changed their voting laws. But it got gutted by the Supreme Court in the Shelby case. And immediately, those states with patterns of discrimination that used to have to justify their voting laws pulled out all kinds of restrictions on voting and gerrymandered maps. This Supreme Court has held that if a voting map is drawn for political reasons and not explicitly to keep one race or group from having power, it's constitutional, it's okay. Which means there are no limits, because every voting map is political in nature. We have to fight against this, even though it's not happening here. We have to work to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, which is one of the reasons we have UU the Vote. You've all heard about it in the announcements over several weeks. Basically, it's a matter of writing postcards and sending them to people in other states, or, as will happen later this year, writing letters to people in our own congressional district to remind them to vote, to give them information about what they need in order to vote, where they need to go, what ID they need, all the things that a government that doesn't really believe in democracy for all wants to keep people ignorant of. This congregation just sent out 400 postcards to voters in North Carolina. Good for us. Speaking as someone who wrote 40 of those postcards, and I'm sure I'm not the most prolific either, I believe in what we're doing. The message on each of this particular set of postcards is, justice is on the ballot in November. Your vote is your voice and your power. I believe in that with all my heart. I believe that justice is indeed on the ballot, and that your vote is your voice and is your power. And we shouldn't be discouraged by the difficulties we face. If voting weren't really important, people wouldn't be making such efforts to prevent it. If the votes of people of color, of immigrants, of other marginalized people didn't make a difference, there wouldn't be so many barriers erected to prevent them from voting. I also believe that despite the noise and fury of anti-democratic forces in our country and in the world, voting, using the democratic process, is a powerful way to fight back, to stand up for our rights, even when those powerful forces attempt to take them away. Since the Dobbs decision, for instance, every single time the issue of abortion has been on the ballot, it has won majority support. Every single time, even in places like Kansas and Ohio. They can only take your rights away if you don't fight for them. And in the name of our ancestors, our parents and grandparents, our spiritual forebears who put their lives on the line to protect our democratic process and extend it to everyone, we are going to stand up for our principles, whatever way we can. If it's joining UU the Vote and writing letters and postcards, if it's sending money to organizations that are protecting democracy, if it's getting out the vote locally or in other areas, we are going to find a way to show up and demonstrate our support for the democratic process in our society. And I believe that if we put our energy into this, we will indeed turn the world around. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. And now, I want everybody to stand, as you are willing and able, and join us in our final hymn, which is 1074 in the Teal Hymnal. What a surprise. Turn the world around.
Let's sing all the repeats.
All the repeats. Let's do it all. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Oh.
Each week, we make an offering from the bounty we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in the spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those that in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. For UUCHV, today's offering will be shared with Black Diamonds. Black Diamond's academic success. Since 2018, they have led the effort to empower young men of color to graduate high school and pursue college degrees. For more information, please visit their website at bdasinc.org. Folks who are joining us from FUSW should refer to The Scoop for information on where to donate. You can make your donation in several ways. If present in the sanctuary, you may give cash or a check in the offering plate as it comes by. From your homes, you can make your donation via credit card or PayPal using the links provided in the e-news or by visiting our website, uuchudsonvalley.org. Or if you prefer, you may always mail us a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. The words are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Filled with the fire of commitment, the passion that this music and this service have brought to us, may we go out, support the democratic process, and turn the world around. Amen.
Welcome to join me on the choruses. Eva. Got the Yeah.
When is she going?
Well, she's actually going first to England tomorrow. Then comes back on the 6th. Then goes to Seattle on the